They told us this family was built on unity, loyalty, and love. But what if the truth was hidden in plain sight for years? What if the biggest betrayal was not between the adults, but between a father and his children? This season, one quiet presence has exposed everything. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Stay with me, because this changes the entire Sister Wives story forever. There was a time when one sentence defined everything about this family, and that sentence was, "When we go all together." And for years, that phrase sounded like unity and loyalty and leadership. It sounded like a promise that no one would ever be left behind. But as the seasons passed and the cameras kept rolling, the meaning of that phrase slowly shifted into something much darker and much more painful. Because what we saw play out was not togetherness, but separation. Not inclusion, but exclusion. Not leadership, but control. And the consequences of that shift are now impossible to ignore, especially when it comes to the relationship between Cody Brown and the children he helped bring into this world. Because season after season, viewers have watched the same uncomfortable pattern repeat itself every time the topic of his strained relationships with his kids comes up. The conversation gets redirected. Every time accountability is required, the focus shifts, and every time healing is possible, the moment is shut down and dismissed. And that avoidance has left behind a silence that speaks louder than any argument ever could. And this season, that silence has become the central storyline, because the truth is no longer buried under side plots or distractions. The truth is right there in front of us, the fractured relationship between a father and his children. And instead of addressing it head-on, Cody continues to move around it as if acknowledging the pain would somehow threaten his authority. And that is where everything begins to unravel. Because the longer the pain goes unaddressed, the deeper the distance grows, and the more permanent the damage becomes. And into that space steps someone no one expected to change the entire narrative: Christine's new husband, David Woolley. And what makes David's presence so powerful is not that he is loud or confrontational, but that he exists as a living, breathing contrast to everything viewers have been watching for years. Because David is not theorizing about what fatherhood should look like, he is practicing it every day. He is present, he is involved, and he is emotionally available to children who have spent years feeling like they were on the outside looking in. And that difference became impossible to ignore during one of the most awkward and revealing moments of the season, the so-called apology visit. Because on the surface, it was framed as a step toward healing, but beneath that surface, it felt more like a performance, a controlled environment where certain topics were allowed and others were strictly off limits. And when David gently offered advice, it was not accusatory, it was not hostile, it was simple and grounded, and it came from experience. He said, "Start with your kids." And in that moment, everything froze, because that one sentence cut through all the noise and landed exactly where it needed to land. And for a brief second, there was an opening, an opportunity for reflection and growth. But instead of stepping into that moment, Cody immediately shut it down, drawing boundaries, emphasizing his purpose, and making it clear that he did not want feedback, especially from the person who has been quietly doing the work he walked away from. And that reaction told viewers everything they needed to know, because when someone cannot hear about their children's pain without becoming defensive, it reveals where their priorities truly lie. And the tension in that exchange lingered long after the scene ended, because it exposed the deeper truth behind the apology tour. It was never about repairing relationships. It was about managing perception and maintaining control over the narrative. And that realization reframed everything that followed, because now viewers were not just watching family drama, they were watching a case study in avoidance and emotional distance. And the suspense grew not from explosive arguments, but from the quiet discomfort of watching opportunities for healing slip away one by one. And the more Cody insisted on boundaries, the clearer it became that those boundaries were not protecting peace, they were protecting pride. And that is where David's presence becomes even more significant, because he does not argue or compete. He simply exists as proof that another way is possible, a way where children are prioritized, where listening comes before defending, and where showing up matters more than being right. And that contrast has slowly but completely changed the way this story is being told. Because now, every interaction, every decision, every moment of deflection is measured against the example standing right next to it. And that comparison is unavoidable. And as the season continues, the question is no longer whether the relationships are strained. The question is whether there is still time to repair them, or whether the distance has grown too wide to ever be crossed again. And that uncertainty is what keeps viewers watching, because every episode carries the weight of what could have been and the fear of what might never be. As the season moves forward, the weight of everything that has gone unsaid begins to press harder, because once the contrast is visible, it cannot be unseen. And David Woolley does not need to make speeches or issue statements, because his actions speak louder than anything else ever could. And what he represents is not perfection, but presence. And that presence fills a space that has been empty for a very long time. And viewers start to notice how often he shows up, how naturally he listens, and how effortlessly he centers the kids without making it a competition or a performance. And that quiet consistency becomes the most powerful element of the entire storyline, because it reframes years of conflict through a new lens, one where the question is no longer about loyalty or obedience, but about emotional safety and stability. And this is where the narrative shifts from reality television drama into something far more relatable and far more uncomfortable, because it forces a reflection not just on Cody's choices, but on the long-term impact those choices have had on his children, who are no longer kids, but adults, carrying the weight of unresolved hurt into their own lives and relationships. And the more David speaks about family, the clearer the divide becomes, because his philosophy is simple. Children are not accessories to adult relationships. They are the foundation. And when he explains that he made it clear from the beginning that no relationship would ever come before his kids, it lands with a kind of quiet power that does not need emphasis, because it highlights exactly what has been missing for so long. And that realization is heavy, because it brings past moments into sharper focus, moments viewers remember but now understand differently. The missed milestones, the emotional distance during critical times, the silence when support was needed most. And when these moments resurface, they are not framed as accusations, but as evidence of a pattern that has never truly been broken. And this is where the suspense deepens, because change is still theoretically possible, but it requires something that has been consistently avoided: humility and self-reflection. And the longer those are delayed, the more permanent the damage becomes, and viewers can feel that tension building with every episode, because every scene carries the unspoken question: will this be the moment when accountability finally happens, or will it slip away again? And the presence of David only heightens that tension, because he represents the path not taken, the work not done, and the consistency not maintained. And that becomes even more profound when the conversation turns toward grief, because grief strips away ego and reveals character. And when Christine speaks about loss, the support she describes receiving from David is not about fixing or reframing. It is about sitting with pain without trying to control it. And that kind of emotional presence cannot be taught in a script. It is learned through empathy and experience. And it stands in stark contrast to a pattern viewers have watched, where pain is often met with defensiveness or distance. And that contrast forces a reckoning, because it reveals that the deepest wounds were never about structure or rules, but about emotional abandonment. And this is where the story stops being about the past and becomes about legacy, because children grow up and build lives of their own, and what they remember is not who was in charge, but who was there. And as milestones continue to pass, houses are bought, families are formed, careers are built, and the absence becomes louder than any argument ever was. And David does not insert himself into those moments. He simply shows up, offering support without conditions. And that consistency becomes the metric by which everything else is measured. And the audience feels it because it mirrors real-life experiences, where actions matter more than intentions, and promises mean little without follow-through. And the suspense now lies in whether that mirror will ever be acknowledged, because recognition is the first step toward repair, and without it, the distance only grows. And as the season continues, viewers are left watching not for explosive confrontations, but for subtle shifts, a softened response, a moment of listening, a sign that the message has landed. And with every episode that passes, the weight of missed opportunities becomes heavier, and the question becomes unavoidable, whether some bridges, once burned, can ever truly be rebuilt, or whether the story has already written its ending. At the end of the day, this story was never about property or marriages or old arguments. It was always about who showed up when it mattered most. And now that the contrast is clear, the truth is impossible to ignore. Real leadership is not about control. It is about presence. And the legacy being written right now will be remembered long after the cameras stop rolling.